Hi, this is Terry with Exact Line Tools. Today I'm going to cover 3 techniques that will transform this classic into a rare gem. Starting with the roof panel, we stripped and primed it with a black epoxy. This is a good material to block and build upon. Now looking at the roof, we can see that there's quite a bit of damage at the back right side of the top. Something hit it pretty good and created a lot of distortions. But as we move along, we can see that there's also dents beyond that area. There's more in the back here, closer to the rear window. And as we go forward, we can see slight distortions really all over the roof panel. Now if we take a walk over to the driver's side, we can discover more dents. These dents are pretty much over the whole top. Some are very small, some are large, but they all have to be dealt with. Now here we've blocked the roof panel with 180 grit. I like finer papers. They reveal the slightest distortions and remove the least amount of material, which helps in the shaping process. I use an 18-inch block, hard block, and a 24-inch blade block, which is basically a spring steel blade with handles on it. Now you can see all the areas that I have marked with a pencil. What I have done is I'm grouping the dents with a pencil into manageable sweeps. This helps keep track of the dents during the repair. You can see there's a lot of black areas. Now we're going to do our first sweep. This is a sweep that's approximately 15 inches by 20 inches. I'm using the pencil line as a guide. I also sometimes use masking tape for a more apparent border. I'm applying my plastic filler and I'm going to be doing my first sweep. And I will press down just on the outside of the border where I've made my pencil marks or I have applied my masking tape. Now this is a larger sweep, approximately 18 inches wide by 30 inches long. You can do this technique one sweep at a time or several sweeps, depending on your speed and the shop conditions, especially the temperature. The blade moves and organizes the plastic filler with great precision, and can also remove all of the overfill. So you can move about freely until you have made all the sweeps you need. This technique will save you hours, days, or weeks depending on your skill level. I'm picking out a few little hard pieces of plastic filler, making sure we get it smooth across the entire area that we want to do our sweep. Once again, I'm applying my pressure to the outer parameters, the areas that I've marked either with the tape or with the pencil, and making my sweep. Found another little bit of hard plastic, just picking that off there. I'll get my little spreader and pick it off. It'll be a little bit easier. And then continue doing my sweep. I'm taking that sweep all the way up to the other side where I've already done a previous sweep and blending it on the other side closest to the camera that I've already completed my sweep. You can do this in a patchwork type process until you have completed filling all of the areas and all the dents that you have grouped through the by pencil or by tape line. Now I'm cleaning up the blade a little bit, removing the extra tape. Now I'm taking off the tape and I'm going to clean off any sort of overfill. Plastic filler used. I use a metal spreader, a Bondo spreader, that I've sharpened the edge to a half round circle and sharpened it. This cuts off the plastic filler that is partially hardened very easily and helps me keep the area that I'm working clean and free of any overfill. The cleaner I can keep this area, the less work I'm going to have to do sanding it and shaping it. When the plastic filler is just beginning to harden is the best time to do this. Here's another example of me removing the tape, and you can see a little bit of overfill at the edge of the tape. At the bottom here, there was quite a bit. I'm just slicing that right off. We can see where the sweep has ended, and we don't need to go any further. We've covered the area that we've marked with the pencil, so we have filled that group of dents, and we can move on and complete filling all of the other groups of dents across the entire top. A little more cleaning here along this edge, and a little bit on that far edge there, and I'll continue my sweeps until I've completed doing all the sweeps on the roof panel. The next step we're going to do is sanding the roof panel. We've got these, they're all really nice. Now sanding, we're going to use a finish DA and 180 grit. I use 180 grit because I don't want to remove a lot of material. I don't want to remove a lot of primer. This is all part of the process of giving this top shape, and I use the primer, the filler, everything as part of that shaping material. Here I'm moving over the plastic filler, and it's beginning to powder and smoothing over of the surface finish. We'll do this for a few minutes. There really isn't any shaping I'm doing. I'm just smoothing down the surface. And I'll give it a little bit more sanding in those areas, like at the edge there, or any area that has a little bit of roughness to it. I'll just smooth over a little bit more, but I'm not out to try to sand it all down and smooth it all out. We still have a blocking process that we need to do over this once we do our initial smoothing down. Now I'm moving over into the next area, and I'll continue to do this over the roof panel and on all the areas that I have done my sweeps until I have completed all of the sanding that needs to be done with the finished DA, and then I will put on my black dry guide coat and I'll block it with, once again, with my long block, my 18-inch block, and my 24-inch blade block, which will accommodate the back areas of the roof panel, which curve quite considerably. We'll do this sweep that's closest to the camera here, move it a little bit so we can get a better look, and you can see that it powders down pretty quickly. I haven't clogged the paper yet, and it's only 180 grit, which is a pretty fine paper. You think that it would clog, but there's not really any overfill to speak of, so it doesn't clog the paper up as much. If it does clog it, you can replace it. It's the cheapest paper you can buy. Those sheets of paper probably are less than $1 each, which is anything less to do body work for $1 each is cheap. Smoothing it down a little bit, and we're going to do this process of filling and lightly sanding with the DA and blocking with the guide coat until we get it completed, and then we will move to paint. Let's have a look at this painted and see how it came out. Well, we can see right away that the top is beautiful. It has a fantastic shape. Even a white top can be exciting if it's got a beautiful shape to it, and there's no flaws to be found on there at all. It looks like a beautiful piece of white ivory that's been polished, sculpted into a beautiful shape. Here again is another view of it moving down the trunk into the trunk lid area across the glass, and down in the trunk lid area we can see more beautiful contours. The trunk fits the surrounding area perfectly, and we can see that that didn't happen by itself. We needed to replace on this car both quarter panels, right and left, and inner quarter panels on both sides, and rear body panel and others. So the gaps were off, and we've corrected those gaps, which I'm showing you here. We didn't do the bottom yet, but we've moved around the trunk lid, establishing a brand new gap which is consistent from one end to the other. We do this by putting our gapping board into the jamb between the trunk and the inner quarter panels, and we fill the side of the work that is the inner quarter panel. We lean the gapping board in toward the trunk so it sets up against the trunk, sticking perpendicular from it, and we fill that outside section with a small portion of plastic filler, which you can see down here just a little bit. I then tape the trunk lid, which you can see there's a little bit of sanding on that. I tape the trunk lid, put my DA on it, and move it across that area that I just filled the gap with, and knock that down till it's the same level as the trunk. I come back and back mask it, and then I do my sweep over the trunk and that area that needs to be filled. You can see I've done that here now on the bottom of the trunk lid, completing that where the trunk lid meets the rear body panel there perfectly and at the same level. You can see a little bit of sanding on the trunk lid where I had my tape, where I rested my DA as I cleaned up the edge of that area that I filled. Now here's a sample of the board that I used. The gapping board is a cardboard, a non-corrugated cardboard that bends nicely around curves. What I'm going to do is clean it up a little bit, put masking tape on it, yellow masking tape, has a release agent, and this one looks like one that I cut for the door jamb. I use these on all the gaps on the car to give it a consistent gap throughout the car. Now if we look at the hood of the car, we can see a whole bunch of gapping boards that I made for the hood, the fender, and we can look at how that worked out. The cowl and the hood fit perfectly. The fender and the hood and the cowl fit perfectly. It's all due to the usage of the gapping board and leveling the panels to one another. This is a technique that really brings beauty to the car. Now I'm moving over to one other issue here, is the overall contour of the car. This is the right door skin, and it has no damage on it, and I'm putting my yardstick on there, and we can see that it lays just about perfectly flat on that door. That means that the whole side of the car should be relatively flat, with some exceptions, but relatively flat. Now if we look at the rear quarter panel on the right side there, we can see that it doesn't sit flat, it's fat. Somehow the metal has gathered up and it is bowed outward. In order to make this area consistent, we're going to need to do something with it. Now the fact that you can see up on the top of the quarter panel, it's been welded across the top about 2 inches down, and it's been welded down the quarter panel near the door jamb, that may account for some of that gathering up of the metal and the expansion of it. In any event, we're going to have to shrink it and draw it in order to get it the yardstick to lay flat with the door into the quarter panel, giving it a consistent contour. Now we can see here that I've done extensive heat shrinking on that quarter panel. On both quarter panels were the same. They were both fat by either them being replacement parts, welding techniques, whatever it was that made it. We needed to address that. Here I started by we reprimed the quarter panel after all that shrinking, and gapped that door to the quarter panel to start it out with, and also welded up this seam back here and put some filler there to get the overall shape started. Now here we can see that we've done a series of sweeps moving from the door back to the end of the quarter panel. We left the area up towards the top done where it was welded, because I know there's a lot of distortions there and I have to fit the molding precisely that completes the quarter panel at the top. But we've got a nice good straight area going on here, which we can see now that we view the car after it's painted. We can see that the fender blends seamlessly into the door. It's a beautiful look, and we've also achieved that on the quarter panel in the door as well. Essentially, the side of the car has a consistent shape to it, which is basically flat, a slight little bit of curve to it. Now if we walk down the car, we can see that the upper quarter panel looks really great. All that area that was welded is now contoured beautifully. Come to the back of the car and take a look down the quarter panel. We can see that around the molding and down, the quarter panel is straight now. It fits the same contour as the door and the fender, which again is a beautiful look. Move back down towards the back of the car, having another look at the trunk lid, which we have matched the trunk lid with the inner quarter panels in the surrounding area to fit perfectly. This again is a great look. It gives it a crisp new car look that's fantastic. Looking at the quarter panel, we can see on the top of the quarter panel there where it was welded, it's got a perfect shape. The molding now fits perfectly. We custom fit that in there, and so we're happy with all of that. It looks really beautiful, and once again we're looking at the trunk lid. We can see how it fits beautifully, and this type of fit and finish really is what makes the car. It makes it the special jewel that it has been transformed into. We're looking around the tail lights, the moldings, and how everything fits. Most of these things that have been replaced, a lot of times we will replace a tail light or headlight bezels because it's actually they're more beautiful than the originals, and the originals would be too much to restore, and really a beautiful looking car from the back. Now if we look down the side of the car, it looks really great. It's really a beautiful car. But let's have another look at the cowl and the hood, the fender, and how they all meet together, and how the gaps are perfect, and how the panels are leveled one to the other. But let's move up forward towards the front of the car, and we'll see that the headlight bezels fit perfectly. I can tell you they're replacement headlight bezels made, they're new, and they were produced recently. Well, you can imagine fitting a brand new headlight bezel to a 60-plus-year-old fender. It's not going to fit, and these did not fit. But you can see that these fit perfectly. They even have a rubber seal that runs around them that butts up against the fender that is integral part of the headlight bezel, which is really a nice package there, and all I needed to do was fit it. The fitting process is very similar to that which I used to with the gapping board, but with a thinner cardboard and a slightly different process, putting them in between the cardboard, in between the bezel and the fender. You can see here that the grill molding also needed to be fitted perfectly. None of these things fit perfectly, along with the taillights and other moldings, so you have to always be sure to do that. Thanks for watching. Check out all of our videos and don't forget to subscribe.